For the next presentation, I would like to invite Sir Ahmad Munjid, Ph.D. for the next presentation. Please, sir, the time is yours. Thank you.
Right, hold on a second. Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Selfie. And thank you all for the previous speakers. I've been enjoying all the presentation. And I hope my presentation will fill some of the gaps to make sure that our discussion on this Palestinian conflict will have a fuller picture. I have prepared some simple presentation. I hope I can share that with you. Can you see it on your screen?
Yeah, we can, sure.
Okay, good. Very good. Okay, again, so the title of my presentation is The Palestinian Crisis and the Failed Diplomacy. Many scholars have argued that in all forms, after plus years diplomacy, everything result in a very sad situation for Palestinian. If you pay attention to the map of the disappearing Palestine, it's very clear there. This map was republished by Washington Post, taken from New York Times a couple of weeks ago. And New York Times was criticized in the US because they published this map as illustration of how the Palestinian state has been shrinking from decade to decade. Now, on the left is the map of the Palestine in 1947, before the establishment of the Israel. Of course, for those who disagree, there are many debates about even the name of the Palestine as a nation, as a state. Because before 1948, clearly, there was no Palestinian state. The area, the West Bank and the Gaza and Jerusalem, was not under one government control. For instance, the West Bank and the Jerusalem was under the Jordan, and part of the Golan Heights was under Syria, and Gaza was under Egypt, and etc. and so on. So, before Israel was established, there was no Palestinian state. There was no argument about that. However, when Israel was established in 1948, the area inhabited by the Arab was divided into two. Part was given to the Israel, to the Jews, and the other was given to the Arab world, including Jordan, and other countries. And because the establishment of the Israeli state was opposed by all the Arab world, as you know, the other speakers already mentioned about this, there was a 6-day war in 1967. And as a result of that war, instead of the territory of the Arab or the Palestinian, can be kept, the territory was even smaller because after the war, the Israel, as as the winner of the war, because of the technology, because of the Western backup, etc. Israeli government seized the Gaza from Egypt and seized the West Bank from Jordan and seized the Golan Heights from Syria and other parts. So the territory of Israel after that 6-day war became double. And the percentage was, if in 1947 was 100%, 1948 became 44% for the Arab. After the 1960 war, the territory belonged to the Arab shrunk into 22%. And with the development, establishment of the settlement, Jewish settlement, today, 2020, 2021, the territory inhabited by the Arab, by the Palestinian Arab, became only 15%. And you imagine, within 70 years, 70 plus years, the territory from 100% shrunk into 15 only percent. And that's where the Palestinian Arab live, mostly Gaza and in West Bank, separated by the settlement of the Jews in the West Bank. Okay, I think that picture helped us to situate, the condition of the Palestinian. Now, we have heard about the last war, the 11-day war last month. From the figure, we know very well the position of the Palestine and the position of the Israel. How many Palestinians killed? At least 256, including 66 children and 40 women. No less than 500 buildings, that is houses, apartments, businesses, stores, offices, hospitals, etc., destroyed because of the airstrike by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And until today, 72,000 people displaced. They lost their homes without electricity, without water, without gas, and live in a very desperate situation. In comparison to that, I'm not saying that the small number of people killed means less. But if you look at the number, on the Israeli side, only 13 people killed. So if you compare that number of casualties of the, of the implication of the war, of the conflict, we want to ask, was it really a war or was it a massacre? It doesn't make any sense that the number of casualties is so imbalanced and the implication of the conflict was so huge, on the side of the Palestinian, but almost, very trivial on the side of the Israel. That was not a war. That was a massacre. If you pay attention to how the military technology and the situation of the Israeli, as a nation state and the Palestinian, the comparison is like between, South and North Pole. I mean, the difference is so far away. On the left side is Palestine, on the right side is Israel. Palestinian has no navy, Palestinian has no air force, the military budget, is very small, not to say capita is only $876, while on the Israeli side, GDP per capita is 42,000, and they have very powerful navy, very powerful air force. That's how they bombarded Gaza on the 11-day war, and very high-tech, military weapons. So, if you think of how the possibility of this conflict, it is very clear the end and the result of the conflict. That is, the elimination of the Palestinian, the destruction, the gradual, very systematic, very programmatic destruction and, elimination of the Palestinian. That was the big picture. If you pay attention to the real picture, I guess everybody already watched this video. On the left side is the American Israeli Jew, meaning actually he is also an American, moved to Jerusalem intentionally to take houses belong to the Palestinian, supported by NGO, Jewish NGO, Jewish right-wing NGO, to make sure that the houses in the East Jerusalem, remember that Jerusalem was divided into two, the West and the East. The West is completely under the Israeli government, and the East was under the Jordan, administration, legally. However, practically, East Jerusalem was also under the Israeli occupation government, because there, all the law, the military, the Israeli government completely controlled the East Jerusalem, where the Masjid al-Aqsa and Dome of the Rock and other located. So watch this video where the American Israeli Jew who already stole the house of this woman, the Palestinian Arab, and the Palestinian Arab woman told him that you are stealing my house. And what was the response from this Jew? The response was very clear. He didn't deny the accusation. Instead, he said, if I'm not stealing your house, somebody else will steal it. So, and he watched this, because the video was, broadcasted through social media, as we know. Now, pay attention to the number, the increasing number of the Jewish settlement. Today, the figure, the official figure is 683,553 settlers. Remember that after the 1967 war, before that, the Jerusalem was completely under the control of Jordan. But after the 67 war, West Bank, including Jerusalem, was annexed by Israeli government. And since then, it was controlled by the Israeli. However, based on the international law, East Jerusalem is supposed to be under the international protectorate. It doesn't belong to Israel. It's, now it is under the international law. However, in reality, it is not international law that is applied in East and West Jerusalem. Instead, it's military Israeli law. So although East Jerusalem belonged to Jordanian administration, from time to time, Israeli government and Jewish NGO, right-wing NGO, sent people, Jewish people, to live in East Jerusalem. And today, there, the number of the Palestinian was 345,000 people, and Israeli settler, people who came and took houses or built houses. Today, the number is already 220,200 people. The number of the Palestinian and the Jews is almost, equal now in East Jerusalem. In the West Bank, and the West Bank, of course, is wider area. The number of the Palestinian is 2.7 million, and Israeli settlers today, in Hebron, in Ramallah, and in other cities, the number is already 463,000 people. In Gaza, Gaza was, completely under the Israeli military government, and the people in Gaza cannot move in and out freely because it was guarded. The entrance and the exit door is heavily guarded by the military, by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. In Israel, it is also important to note that 1.6 million Arab live there. Why? Because from the time of their great-grandfather, they already live in the place that became, Israel. And when in 1948, the establishment of the Israeli state, they were given two options, whether they will get out from the Israeli state or they became Israeli citizens. And the number of the Arab who choose to remain to stay there is 1.6 million Arabs. And the number of the Jews is 5.8 million. Actually, the number of this between the Jews and the Palestinians are almost equal, and therefore the conflict is really, like endless. We cannot see the end of this conflict. Now, beside the problem of illegal settlement, another very serious problem is the segregation wall. Since 2000, after the second Intifada, there was two Intifada. The first one in 1990s, and then the second one in 2000. Israeli government built 700 kilometers wall, and the wall is like 8-meter height, equipped with electricity wire that segregated, the Palestinian villages and cities. So the movement of the Palestinian was, blocked because of that wall, and their life very, very difficult. I was there in 2018. I watched this wall and I listened how people, really complain about that. I talked to one Christian Arab, who has to drive like 50 kilometers from his house in order to get to the military checkpoint, only to see his olive plantation that is located behind his house. If the house is here and hold on a second.
Sorry, sir. Just a reminder. It's only 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay. All right. But the problem is that the segregation wall that divided the Palestinian villages and towns make the life of the Palestinian very difficult. pay attention to Gaza by David Cameron, by the word of David Cameron, Gaza is called as an open air prison. There are 2.1 million Arab who was denied movement. They cannot get out from Gaza freely, and the Arab who already get out from there cannot enter Gaza. The Israeli government created this law that the Arab who leave Gaza in a certain period of time, they will lose their the right to return to Gaza. So more and more Arabs left Gaza and they cannot even return. Edward, the very well-known scholar, who live in the U.S., he, with his popularity, with his authority in academia, he himself cannot return to his, hometown. This is the picture of how they live in Gaza, and therefore it's called as an open air prison. But today there is a very significant changing constellation. The changing happens among the Palestinian, among the Israeli and the Jews inside and outside Israel. But with the appointment of Bennett as the new prime minister, Bennett is a very right-wing politician who explicitly denied the existence of the Palestinian state. So we will have to see what will happen. Netanyahu was already very right-wing politician, but Bennett is even worse. But in the U.S., we heard more critical, progressive politician, and also the situation is also changing among the Muslim and the non-Muslim world. These are individuals, thinkers, organization who is very critical of the Israeli policy. In the past, anything related to Israeli policy, whether it's related to war or treatment of the Palestinian or anything to do with government, is considered as right and cannot be criticized. Anybody who criticizes Israeli policy is considered as anti-Semitic. However, today, critical voice, are increasing in the West and also in the U.S. Very clear that the two-state solution today, from the situation today, is impossible. There is no way that two-state solution can be, the way out for the crisis, because with the increasing number of the settler in West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and that is the area where the territory of the Palestinian state is supposed to be, instated. But the territory already taken by the Israeli and the Jewish settler. So it is impossible, therefore, today for the two-state solution to be possible there. So in all of this, it is very clear that diplomacy has been failed. Since 1948, there has been 88 United Nations resolution. The result? The shrinking territory of the Palestinian. The backup of the Israeli, business person, politician, and government has been, unconditional. The media, the economic power, the Holocaust industry, and others. But we have hope in the human rights organization, among the young people through social media, also the international pressure. I heard the other day the argument by Farid Zakaria. I think it was very interesting. The last resort for this is international pressure through morality, because the establishment of Israel was to, for justice and freedom, not only for the Jews, but even for the Jews. Today, justice, is very fake, and therefore, with the increasing international pressure based on morality, not based on diplomacy, the political diplomacy is failed already. From all sides, it is just impossible. the last resort will be morality. So whether peace is possible. That was my picture when I was there in Haifa a couple of years ago. Thank you very much.